Hello and welcome to the Connected Community Podcast. Today my guest is Stacey Brown, who is an author, a co-host of an incredible podcast, and she is a spiritual and intuitive mentor. And she talks about her path of spiritual awakening. And it really started out when her son was going down a path of destruction using drugs and alcohol. He was not in a good space and ended up slamming himself into a tree going 100 miles an hour. It was when he was in the hospital that Stacey had this beautiful spiritual awakening and her intuitive abilities came online. Today, we talk about how to build a spiritual practice, how we can tap into manifestation. And this isn't a passive process. This is a very active process where we can use journaling as a tool. Journaling where we journal our gratitudes, but then also what we want to manifest and speaking about it as if it's already happening. So this is a beautiful podcast. If you have some dreams and some ambitions, but you're not quite there, how to pull them into reality and make them happen for you. I want to thank you so much for being here today. And please, if you're enjoying these podcasts, take a moment to give us a like, a share, and a subscribe. And even more thanks if you can give us a comment and a review. We appreciate you so much. And more than anything, I just want to thank you for tapping into today's episode. I hope you'll enjoy. Thank you for listening to the Connected Community Podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, please like, share, and subscribe. I can be found at www.nickyyoga.com, NICKYYYOGA.com. Until I see you again next week, I hope you have a beautiful day. Hi, Stacey. Good morning and welcome to the Connected Community Podcast.
Hi, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
I'm excited to have you. So I want you to tell a little bit about yourself. I know you're an author, you have a podcast, you've got lots of things that you do, but share a little bit about yourself and your background with us.
Yeah, so, I was living a pretty predictable life in a community here in Maryland, successful hairdresser, really built a solid foundation for myself, living in my dream home in the country, married, 4 kids. Life was really picturesque. I felt like I had the fairy tale ending. And 5 years ago, my 17-year-old son plummeted into issues with mental health and substance abuse. And in January of 2019, he overdosed in our home and survived. And then 4 months later, he attempted to take his own life by running his car into a tree at 100 miles an hour. And when that happened, life stopped. Like everything just came to a screeching halt. And I had to figure out what I was going to do to care for my son. And during the time of caring for him, I had some really significant spiritual encounters in the hospital that led me on a journey of self-discovery. And I made the decision to give up my career in the beauty industry and help people in a bigger way. So I use my intuitive abilities along with some coaching certifications that I've received. And I do intuitive readings and coaching and mentorship for people from all different walks of life from around the world.
Yeah.
I specialize in people who are going through trauma and people who are going through spiritual awakenings. And in that time, I decided to write a book about my journey. And I also joined my good friend Nimesh on his podcast. I joined at episode 17 and we're just about to hit episode 200, which is mind-blowing. Yeah.
Congrats.
So I've been very busy in this season, learning more about myself, uncovering new lessons about myself, and simultaneously helping other people on their journey as well.
Yeah. It's interesting where we just kind of go along with life and everything's status quo. And then all of a sudden something happens and it just changes our reality overnight and everything is different. And I imagine that was what it was like for you when that happened with your son. It was just like life just kind of came to a dead halt for that moment.
Yeah. And it was really hard to figure out what was next, right? Because when you go through an experience like that, nobody comes out of it the same. Like I often tell people the day that my son got in the car, it was as if he put the whole family in the car with him. And
Yeah.
we all came out with a different timeline for healing. And we all came out with different injuries. And we had to navigate what it was going to look like to be in this new season and what we were going to do. And
Yeah.
it was a very, very challenging place to be.
Yeah. Yeah. What was your spiritual path before that day? And then how did it shift after that moment?
So I've always been fairly spiritual, but I was raised in a very religious home. So there
Mhm.
wasn't a lot of exploration of spirituality, which made it really hard for me because I felt connected to something more. I definitely would get intuitive impressions, especially working with clients behind the chair.
Mhm.
And I would just guide those conversations in the direction that I felt they were meant to go instead of telling people, I'm intuitive, this is what I feel, or this is what I think.
Yeah.
I would just guide the conversation in that direction.
Mm.
And when everything happened with my son, I had some really powerful encounters where I knew things that there was no way for me to know, like medically. And because I used my voice and spoke up and said what I thought was going on, it's ultimately saved my son's life.
Mm.
And it made me realize that I had a voice and I had these intuitive abilities and I had to use them. Because if I didn't, my son wouldn't be here. So
Yeah.
it sent me on this really interesting journey of self discovery, recognizing that I was needed in a different way than what I originally thought, that the world needed a different side of me that I didn't even realize was there.
Yeah. Yeah. You'd shared with me a little bit before about those insights that came while he was in the hospital, and I would love for you to share them because it was something that came to you that you wouldn't have known otherwise with your, non-medical background.
Yeah. So I don't have any trained medical background. And on one day in the hospital, the doctors were having a hard time figuring out what was going on with my son. He was spiking a fever of 106, 107 degrees. And the doctors were chalking it up to the fact that he had a traumatic brain injury and that his body couldn't regulate temperature. And so I walked into his room and he was the only one in the room when normally there was a lot of medical staff around.
Mm-hmm.
And I walked into his room and I heard, get the oil. And I was like, I have no idea what this means. So I put my backpack down and I kind of started rustling through it, trying to figure out what this message was that I was getting. And I stumbled upon a greeting card, a well wish card that somebody had sent to us. And in the card was a little envelope with some consecrated oil from a healer in Lebanon called Saint Charbel. And he was a healer during the 1800s. And so I took out that little piece of gauze with the oil on it and I walked over to my son's body. And I am a certified Reiki practitioner. So my instinct was to use Reiki practice on him.
Mm-hmm.
And I took the oil and I went over his temples. And then I worked my way down to his tracheotomy that was doing the breathing for him. And then as I moved to his chest and my hands traveled over his chest, I had this electricity that traveled through my body. And I knew immediately what was wrong. And I went running into the hallway and my son's nurse was there. And I said, Nora, my son has a massive infection in his chest. He needs an IV antibiotic that starts with a C for 3 days. And she looked at me like I was crazy,
Mm-hmm.
which I mean, I felt crazy.
Yeah.
So I said, can you just get the doctor? And within a few minutes, doctors and nurses were surrounding his bed. And they came to find out that his one lung was totally filled with fluid and his other lung was almost completely filled with fluid. He had a massive infection in his chest. And when we went into his room the next day, there was the IV antibiotic hanging by his bed that started with a C.
Mm-hmm.
And
Wow.
I remember the doctor just saying to me, you're crazy, right? And I kind of laughed because, I
Mm-hmm.
mean, yeah, it is crazy. And he said, but your crazy saved your son's life. And I
Mm.
remember just thinking, had I not spoken up, then what? And
Yeah.
it made me very passionate about speaking up and using my voice. It made me
Yeah.
recognize that I could have held back in that circumstance and let people judge me, and my son wouldn't be here.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes me wonder if there's sometimes where you get an intuitive hit and it's not the right time to say something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think that there are times where I've, gotten intuitive hits and held back a little bit, um, just maybe due to the circumstances and feeling a little bit insecure or feeling like it's not the appropriate time to say something. But for the most part, when I get intuitive hits, I try to follow like the guidance that I'm getting because of the incidents that I've had where I've spoken up and something powerful has happened.
Yeah. Yeah. What are some other examples of that happening where you got an intuition, you spoke out loud, and then there was a different result?
So, I would say another significant experience that I had while my son was in the hospital was he was really struggling to function at all on his own. He was in a medically induced coma. And we would go home from the hospital every night and just collapse in bed with exhaustion. And on one night, I don't remember falling asleep, but I remember hearing my husband like breathing next to me. So I knew he was asleep. And I was laying in bed, and my son in this vision came walking into my room. And he was healthy and he was dressed in his usual clothes. And he sat on the edge of the bed and he said, "Mom, I don't know what to do because I've seen this." And he pointed to the corner of my room, and I saw this bright white light. And on one side of the white light was my grandfather, and on the other side was my husband's grandfather.
Mm-hmm.
And he was like, "I've seen this." And then he said, "And if I stay, I have a huge mess to clean up." And then he looked at me as if asking me what he should do. I just said, "It's not up to me." And then my son was gone. And I woke up the next morning and I felt total peace. I felt so calm. And I recounted to my husband like what had happened. And he collapsed on the floor and he was like, "Oh my God, like our son is going to die. Like he's going to die. Like he
Mm-hmm.
came to you in this vision because he's going to die. Like we have to get to the hospital right now." So we got dressed really quickly and went to the hospital. And when you're in a medically induced coma, the doctors will slowly wake you up intermittently to stimulate your brain without overstimulating it because your body has been through so much.
Mm-hmm.
And so we were walking into the hospital and I heard my son's voice and he was like, "Send dad into the room and I'll confirm I was in your room last night." And I
Wow.
was like, I'm losing my mind. Like I've gone crazy.
Yeah.
This is crazy. So I just blurted it out to my husband. "You need to go in the room when they wake him and he's going to confirm that he was there." So I waited in the waiting room and he was gone for like 20 minutes. And when he came back out, he had tears streaming down his face. And he said, he confirmed in 2 different ways that he was in our room last night. And I was like,
Mm-hmm.
"I told you, like, I'm telling you, I knew he was in our room."
Yeah.
Well, we go home that night and we're getting into bed and the phone rings and it's the hospital and it's late at night. And the nurse is like, "Everything is okay. Like, I don't want to scare you. I just want you to know we woke your son up." And he just keeps saying the same thing, like mouthing the same phrase over and over again. And we don't know what it means. And he's saying, "I was upstairs. I was upstairs. I was upstairs." And it
Mm-hmm.
was another confirmation that he had been in our room that night in this vision and had visited me and brought me this information about where he was on his journey and what was happening. It
Wow.
was profound.
Yeah. What happened to him after that?
So he made a full recovery, which is a miracle. He should not have survived.
Mm-hmm.
And he now works in the addictions community, helping people who are struggling with addiction and substance abuse and mental health issues.
Wow.
And he's been sober now for several years and lives in Florida and is very successful in helping people.
Oh, that's awesome.
Isn't that
Wow.
great?
Yeah, that's amazing.
It is really amazing.
What was his memory of that experience?
he doesn't have a lot of memory of the
Yeah.
experience. Initially, he did, but they had his body on so many different drugs,
Yeah.
so much medication that it's all really just a blur to him. Very hard to remember, very hard to process the days in the hospital, etc., because it was like he was in a coma for most of the time.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. Do you feel like everyone has this intuitive ability and that we're just kind of so disconnected from nature and ourselves that we have somehow lost it?
Yes, I
Yeah.
absolutely believe that we are all extremely intuitive beings.
Hmm.
And I believe that we get really caught up in what's happening around us, and it makes us lose sight of our gifts and abilities.
Yeah.
And I think that we live in a world that's so fast paced and so disconnected that a lot of us are living in that space of disconnection on a regular basis and not tapping into our natural given abilities to use our intuition.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Mhm.
what is something that we can do to strengthen that within ourselves?
So I would say that having a healthy daily routine
Hmm.
is really important. And when I say a healthy daily routine, I mean making room for mindfulness and meditation,
Hmm.
making time where we don't have our electronic devices at us, we don't have the TV on, we don't have all this outside stimulation, but we're really focusing on what's happening inward
Hmm.
is super important. I'm also a big believer in the power of journaling. I think
Yeah.
journaling is a practice that can really help bring us in tune with ourselves and what we have going on and what's happening in the world around us. And then I also believe taking time in nature is super
Yeah.
important, right? Getting outside, connecting with the world around you, having daily practices like that that you lean into on a consistent basis are going to
Yeah.
strengthen your intuitive muscle. And the
Yeah.
more you use it, the stronger it gets, just like
Yeah.
any other muscle in the body.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm starting to think as a society, we're so addicted to dopamine hits. And so a dopamine hit can be like sending a text message and getting one back, or scrolling on our phone, or just endlessly scrolling, shopping, or going shopping, or whatever those dopamine hits are, drugs, alcohol, food, things like that. And all of the things that you're speaking about, connecting with ourselves, going into nature, meditation, mindfulness, it's the opposite of those
It's the total opposite.
dopamine hits. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And can be
Yeah.
really challenging for people, right? If they're used to the dopamine hits, if
Hmm.
they're used to receiving stimulation externally, then it can be really challenging to do the things that I'm talking about. But if we do them consistently, we get stronger, right? The more that
Yeah.
we take that time of mindfulness and meditation, the better we're going to get at mindfulness and meditation. It's
Hmm.
not the kind of thing you can do once a month, once every 6 months, and think that you're going to have this amazing connection. It's something you have to work on and really work on building. And imagine the same way we see the physical body transform with consistency, we can do the same thing with other parts of ourselves, like our intuition, when we work
Hmm.
on strengthening that muscle. But it takes the consistency of showing up and making sure that we're doing it in order to get to that place.
Yeah. Yeah. I've noticed that in myself in the last year. My intuition has become so strong, and I didn't have awareness of it before.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been interesting because I've known that, but then I'm kind of getting feedback from other people like, wow, your intuition, or I'll ask something right when they're thinking of it. And so it's been really interesting too, is trusting that in myself. So
Mm-hmm.
knowing that I had it and then not really believing in it, and then getting these hits from other people saying, wow, you're really intuitive. And then really honoring that part of myself and going into that has been this journey in this process.
Mm-hmm.
So how do we trust our intuition? Because I think a lot of times we think, oh, well, that was just a chance, or oh, that just happened, or that was a coincidence,
Mm-hmm.
and we diminish it. And so, how do we trust that it's true and accurate for us?
I would say this goes back again to the consistency. The more consistent you are with listening to your intuition, the more you're going to trust it, right?
Hmm.
It's just like any other relationship that you build in your life. When you trust yourself and you show up for yourself, it manifests in the way that your intuition works. if we don't take the time to be introspective and reflective, it's going to be very hard to listen to our intuition. But when we take the time to be introspective and reflective consistently, we get to know that inner voice, and we get to know what it sounds like and what it feels like when our intuition is aligned. And when we know what it feels like, then we can trust it, right? So we first gain the awareness of it, and then the acceptance of it, and then we can pursue what we need to with it. But I, again, go back to, it's about cultivating the habit consistently,
Yeah.
right? Having that consistent relationship with yourself where you're constantly checking in, making sure that the messages align with what you have going on. I think it's very hard for people to listen to their intuition when they're not consistent.
Yeah. Yeah. I almost feel like when we follow our intuition, there's this natural flow and ease in life. And then when we don't follow our intuition, we're kind of bumping into walls or we're swimming upriver. Has that been
Mhm.
your experience?
100%.
Hmm.
100%. When I'm following my intuition, things tend to unfold in a very natural way. And when I'm feeling churned up, I know I'm not listening to my intuition and I have to reset myself. I think we're still having a human experience. And so it can be challenging to listen to our intuition all the time, which is why a lot
Yeah.
of times we'll go, oh, I wish I had listened, or I wish that I had said this, or I wish that I had done that, because we don't always listen to our intuition. We don't
Yeah.
always follow those messages, right? We're
Hmm.
still having that human experience. We're still flawed. We're still going to question and doubt. Those things are still going to come up. But the more consistent we are in how we show up, the more likely we are to listen to our intuition and to follow what it tells us.
Yeah. Yeah. And tell me about journaling, because I know you have a program with journaling and that's a
I
powerful
do.
practice for you. And so, how do people use journaling to strengthen this part of themselves?
You know, it's so interesting. I used to find journaling to be a habit that I had, but I would close the journal when I was done, like dumping my thoughts on the page, and I
Mm,
wouldn't feel any better. And I was
mm,
like, this is a hard practice to keep up when you're going through a challenging time and you try to write stuff down and you're not feeling like you're getting anywhere with it.
yeah.
And so with time, I developed a journaling technique that includes the power of gratitude and affirmations and manifesting all in one space. And I did that because I kept seeing clients come to me with the same frustration. Like, I like the idea of journaling, but I don't feel any better when I do it. And I wanted there to be a system to follow that made it practical and made it easy to
Hmm.
show up for yourself. And so I concocted this journaling formula, and I've used it now for hundreds of people from all different walks of life, and it has changed their relationship with journaling. But the thing
Yeah.
is, with journaling, a lot of people do one step, and that's what I call brain dumping, where they just sit and dump their thoughts on paper. And when they're done, there's no outcome. There's
Hmm.
no closure. There's no answer. It's just dumping the words on the paper of what you've been through and closing the book. In my formula, we're using brain dumping to start the journaling session, but then we're going into a space of using gratitude, affirmations, and manifesting to bring ourselves into a space of what we want and connecting with the energy of what we want instead of staying in the space of what we don't want. And when we
Hmm.
do that, I believe that also strengthens our intuitive muscle because we're in a space where we're being consistent about acknowledging the things that we already have and requesting the things that we want through
Yeah.
manifestation.
Are the manifestation and the gratitude pieces related to the brain dumping? So I'm imagining if I had a really frustrating day and I'm just like writing down about all the frustrations and I'm angry about some things that are going on, does my gratitude need to be related to that day and what I wrote?
Not
Or,
necessarily.
okay. Mm-hmm.
Gratitude just needs to be intentional. So I
Okay.
wouldn't say it necessarily has to tie into what was happening in that day,
Mm-hmm.
but the more detailed you get in your gratitude, like the more in the moment you get with your gratitude, the more likely it is to affect your mood. And we have been shown over time that the practice of gratitude can help boost our mood.
Yeah.
Now, when we're grateful for something, it's really easy to say, I'm grateful for my family. I'm grateful for my friends. I'm grateful for my home. Those things don't take a lot of thought. Okay? They're
Yeah.
things that we already know that we're grateful for those things, but they don't really necessarily bring about an emotion in us because we're not connected to what we're saying.
Yeah.
So, a practice of intentional gratitude is really getting in the moment. And I would say, I'm grateful today that I got to record this podcast episode with Nicky, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm being in the moment of a moment in the day that I'm specifically grateful for and what's happening in that moment and being super intentional about it. And I believe
Yeah.
when we do that, we can actually shift our mood into a more positive space. So you have that brain dumping section, that
Yeah.
section where you say all of the frustrating things that happen in the day, but
Mm-hmm.
then you shift it and you go into a space of what you're grateful for in that day that doesn't necessarily have to be tied to the frustration, but is tied to something that you're emotionally connected to, which then helps boost your mood.
Yeah. Yeah. A couple of years ago, I did this gratitude journal on Facebook, and I did it on Facebook to keep me accountable so that I wouldn't like flake out. And so I'd do, 1/365 days, and I would take a photo of something I was grateful for. And it really made me throughout the day look at the food, the sunsets, the weather, the bugs, the flowers, the trees, and really, it really transformed my experience that year. I didn't keep doing it. I didn't want to do it publicly. And I need to kind of get back to that practice. But I did find it really powerful because even in the darkest days and when things were really awful, there was really beautiful things to be grateful for.
Mm-hmm.
And so it definitely is a super powerful practice. I can see that.
100%. And the more you do it, the more you're going to gain from it, right?
Yeah.
So having the practice consistently on a daily basis where you're practicing that gratitude is a powerful process and something that can really help to shift what you have happening in your life right now. So maybe you
Mm-hmm.
aren't where you want to be. Maybe you are frustrated. Maybe you are feeling the weight of various stressors in your life. But when you take the time to be grateful for the things that are going your way, the things that are happening in the way that you need them to be or want them to be, it immediately puts you in a space of reflection, recognizing that, okay, the whole world isn't stacked against me. Here are some things that are going my way.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a beautiful, quick perspective shift
Mm-hmm.
that happens, and it's got a lasting effect to it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so, and I love that you said that you're not just kind of like blurting out the same, like, I'm grateful for my health and my home and my family and my, all of that, that we take for granted every day. And it's easy to blurt out. So I love how you've taken that a step further. And then that makes me wonder with the manifestation piece too, we can also get trapped into wanting to manifest the same things over and over again. So in that practice, that journal practice, how does the manifestation piece work in?
So I am a big believer in the power of manifesting. I
Mm-hmm.
really believe that when we connect with the energy of what we want in our lives, we can attract it and make it happen.
Mm-hmm.
And writing about it puts it in black and white and gives you a tangible space to see what you're manifesting. But
Mm-hmm.
you've got to connect with the energy of what it would feel like to have what you want as if it already exists. So it's not just about, I want to have a home in the country. It's what would it feel like to have that home in the country? What would it feel like to be in that space? What would it feel like to have your family there? What would it feel like to be interacting in that space? All of those sensations are a huge part of it. And writing about what that would feel like is super important.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Manifesting is something that I just really connected with and recognized that it needed to be a part of my practice. I believe that it's really important to shuffle up what you're manifesting. So I often tell people to focus for 7 days on one area of their life,
Mm-hmm.
writing about it and manifesting. So the subject might be the home that you live in,
Yeah.
but each day in that 7 days, you're kind of tweaking how you're talking about it. So you're not writing the exact same thing, but you're connecting with the energy of what you want to happen in that home space.
Mm-hmm.
And then after the 7 days, switch it up to a different topic. Maybe it's your career path. Maybe it's the dynamic of the relationships in your family. Maybe
Yeah.
it's something, a goal that you have to pursue some education or take a class. Whatever it is, it's giving you the space to think about what
Yeah.
you want for your life and connect with the energy as if it already exists. So when we
So are you
manifest,
saying it in present time? Are you speaking
yes.
like I have this home and this environment?
So manifesting is talking about things that you want to happen as if they already exist.
Mm-hmm.
So you'd be talking about them in the present moment. So you wouldn't say, I want a beautiful home in the country. You would
Right.
say, I live in a beautiful home
Mm,
in the country.
okay.
I'm in a loving partnership. My partner and I are sitting on the porch swing outside watching the sunset, dreaming of things that we're going to do to our home, and here are some of the things we're going to do to it, right? So it's about
Yeah.
talking about it in the present moment instead of the energy of I want, because I want means you don't already have it. It doesn't already
Yep.
exist.
Yep.
And manifesting is connecting with I have it, it's already mine, it already exists.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So when we talk about those things, we talk about them in the present,
Yep.
and then we attract the energy of what it would feel like to have those things into our lives because we're declaring it. We're
Mm-hmm.
declaring it in manifestation. Not this is what I want for the future, but this is what I have and it's already mine.
Yeah.
See
I
the
think that would
difference?
really help with 100% makes sense. Yes. And I think that would help with procrastination efforts too, where you want to Maria Kondo your home and you just can't get to it. And it's like been on your list of things that you want to do all year, to envision your home where it has like flow and ease, or it's been feng shuied, or, you want to go back to school, or you want to get into this craft thing that you gave up and you want to get back into it.
Yeah.
And so instead of always procrastinating, to manifest that as if it's happened and visualize it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Visualize it as if it's already happening.
Yeah. I have a friend recently that said something really interesting to me, and she was saying how she's been manifesting all these small things, and that they've been happening, but she hasn't been manifesting these like gigantic things. So, what would you say to that?
I would say again, it's about connecting with the energy of what you want, right?
Mm-hmm.
So to me, that's manifesting playing small.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like we'll work on the little things. The little things are okay to ask for and to want. But when it comes to these bigger things, like I'm not going to ask because I'm afraid of what the answer is, or I don't know if I'm going to get this.
Mm-hmm.
I again go back to there is nothing too big that you can't manifest it. It's
Mm-hmm.
about connecting with the energy of what you want, no matter how big or small that thing is, that space that you want, that job that you want, that career shift that you want, that book you want to write, that thing you want to do. It's really about just connecting with the energy in the same way, whether it's
Yeah.
something small that you want or something big. You've got to
Yeah.
connect with it as if it already exists. The the
Mm-hmm.
the concept is the same regardless of the order.
Right. So my husband and I want to eventually have a retreat center, and have a bunch of different practitioners joining us in this retreat space, and we've got a vision for it. And so if I were to journal about it and do a manifestation practice around it, I feel like 7 days wouldn't be enough. Would I need to go back and revisit it over and over again, or how do I keep that target in my mind?
I absolutely think it's worth revisiting on a consistent basis.
Hmm.
When you have a goal that's very specific and you know you want to reach it,
Yeah.
manifesting is a powerful way to do that. And so, if it's something big like that that's really weighing on your heart to create, then maybe spending more than 7 days is a good idea.
Yeah.
But I would still say it's nice to shuffle things up. So you might focus on it for 7 days and then take a break. And maybe there's another area that you want to focus on. And then you go back into manifesting about
Yeah.
this retreat center because a retreat center is a big thing that you want to accomplish in the future,
Yeah.
right? It's a big dream. And so it's going to take manifesting about it on a consistent basis to make it happen because you've got to consistently connect with the energy of what you want to happen with this retreat center.
Yeah.
right? The more consistent you are in how you feel about it, the more likely you are to bring it to fruition.
Yeah. Yes, that totally makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. It makes me think of the last couple of years I've done a vision board, and it's been a pretty extensive vision board, and I keep it up where I'm getting ready in the morning, putting my makeup and stuff like that. And I'm looking in the mirror and it's behind me, and I kind of look at it all the time. And it's amazing how at the end of last year, everything on that vision board had come true. And I'm looking at it this year, and everything on that vision board had come true. And I took a lot of time creating it. I spent like a month creating this vision board, but I was very specific in health and fitness and home and friendships and career and all of these things. And so, do you do that with people? Do you do vision boards and things like that that are tangible?
I have done vision boards and I'm passionate about them. I think they're a brilliant way to claim that consistency that you want in tangibly showing you this is what I want my life to look like. I think that it's
Mm-hmm.
another avenue to manifesting what you want because you're connecting through pictures and words what you want for your future, which I feel is visualization is so powerful in and of itself. And
Yeah.
doing a vision board gives you that visualization to truly connect with what you want. So, out of any manifestation practice, I think that's one of the most successful because it really connects you with visions of
Yeah.
what you want your life to look like. And if you put it somewhere like you do, where you're seeing it every day, you're
Mm-hmm.
connecting with the energy of what you want on a consistent basis.
Yeah.
What could be more powerful than that?
Yeah. 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 And it can just be, it can be words, it can be images, it can be like whatever creates that sensation and that desire for you.
Yes, whatever you feel connected to. For a lot of people it's visual pictures, for some it's words, but absolutely there is something powerful about creating a vision board for what you want and having that vision board in a tangible location where you can look at it consistently.
Yeah. And
Mhm.
so, do you have a manifestation practice that people can do going into a new year?
So I think that there's something really powerful to keeping your goals consistent all year long. But I also know there's something exciting about a new year coming and setting new goals. I
Hmm.
think it would be the perfect time to establish a new vision board and then, in conjunction with the vision board, doing some specific writing about those things that you have on your vision board and connecting with the energy of what you want to happen in both written and visual
Hmm.
is powerful, right? And a great way to start off the year. I wouldn't say that there has to be a practice that's any different than anything you do throughout the year, but I
Yeah.
would say a great launching spot is to say, okay, I am going to now create what I want for this year through a vision board. And I'm going to write about the energy that I'm connecting with in this vision board now as I set my goals for this coming year.
Yeah. Yeah. In my spiritual community, I've noticed that there's this trend, and I know that you've seen this. I think it's super common in people that are on a spiritual path where they're not moving towards goals and they're not moving towards manifestation, but they're like, oh, I'm just going to manifest that this happens. I'm just going to trust that this is going to happen. I'm going to trust that the universe is going to take care of me
Mm-hmm.
without, I think, a lot of that intention behind it. And so, do you see that? And because I feel like it's a trap.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I definitely see it. I definitely think that it's a trap. I think that a lot of times people get caught up in the idea that if they just show up, things will happen. And I don't believe that. I believe that it has to be equal parts us showing up
Hmm.
and us taking action in order to meet the universe halfway. I think
Yeah.
without meeting the universe halfway, I think it makes it really hard for things to happen that we want to happen. I
Right.
really do. I think we've got to have that drive and that desire to move forward as well. And from that desire comes this energy from the universe that says, I'm going to meet you halfway because I see what you're doing.
Yeah.
But I think it's
Yeah.
got to be both.
I feel like it's super common. Why do you feel like so many people on a spiritual path have gotten stuck in that rut where I'm just going to trust the universe is going to take care of me, or I'm just going to trust that I'm going to find a place to live, or I'm going to trust that this job's going to fall in my lap? And often it doesn't.
Mhm.
But why is that so common?
I think we live in a world of instant gratification.
Yeah.
I think we live in a world where people don't think that they have to try to get the things that they want. The perfect example is, you get on Amazon, there's something that you need. It can be at your door the next day. Like there's no waiting and working for it. It's just there, right?
Yeah.
And I feel like we're like that with a lot of things. We become a society of convenience and doing things the easy way, taking the
Hmm.
easy way out and saying, oh, well, the universe will make this happen, right? Or all I have to do is show up and this will happen. And to me, it's kind of a reckless way of being because I definitely feel we've got to match the energy of the universe and say, okay, I'm willing to work for this. What do I need to do to make it happen?
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like there's this balance between effort and ease too that needs to
Yes.
happen with like life in general.
Yes. 100%.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you have any other words of wisdom or things that you can share for the audience? I think one of the things I would maybe touch on is that even if people are adverse to a journaling practice, I think something similar from what you're saying would be to have a really mindful visualization. So if they are
Mhm.
like not, because there's some people that just won't journal, right?
Mhm.
But maybe they could go in and have a really strong meditation and visualization practice of that manifestation piece.
100%. I believe that there's a way to do it for everybody, and
Hmm.
not everybody's going to be connected to writing. It is a powerful practice, but like I said, not everybody's going to connect with that. So maybe you're somebody who is more of a meditator. And when you meditate, you get that visual and you connect with it, and that's the way you're manifesting.
Yeah.
Everybody's different. I think the important thing to remember is you've got to take some sort of action on a
Yeah.
consistent basis, and you got to figure out what works for you. Some people have the hesitation with journaling because they don't know how to journal.
True. Yeah.
Like
Right. Yeah, exactly.
they don't know how, like they don't know an effective way, and so they're going to poo poo the idea of journaling because they don't enjoy it and they don't have a practice.
Yeah.
But if somebody comes along and teaches them a practice, a lot of times they tend to feel differently about it because now they have a purpose and an intention behind how they're doing things, right?
Yeah.
But if it isn't writing for you, what else is it? Is it visualization? Is it meditation? Is it time in nature? Like, how are you going to cultivate a life that you can be proud of? How do you pursue that? And I think the
Yeah.
big thing is finding a way is the important part. How you do it is important, yes, but finding a way that works for you is really the most important.
Yeah. Yeah. Good point. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And it's just taking those moments of self reflection, right? Walking in nature, being barefoot, connecting with ourselves. It's just
Yes,
disconnecting from the outside world and connecting with our inner self is such a powerful practice. And then people often say they don't have time, but we do have time if we manage our time effectively.
that's right.
And it's so important for our mental health and our overall well being as well.
100%. A hundred
Yeah.
percent.
Yeah. So, Stacey, how do people connect with you? I would love for you to share your book and your offerings. I'll put that all in the show notes, but how can people find you?
So the best way to find me is through my website, stacey-brown.com, and it's spelled Stacey-brown.com. My social medias are listed there. I have a blog that's listed there with a blog post that comes out every month. I have a beautiful women's group that I just started that's a women's monthly membership. There's information there about that as well. Um, you have access to me via email through my website. It's a great way to connect with me. And my book, Journey to Soul Center Discovering the Gift of Surrender, is available on Amazon and Audible.
Awesome. Well, congratulations on that. That's a
Thank
big
you.
thing.
Oh, it was
Yeah.
huge. Huge
Yeah.
undertaking.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Stacey, so much for this conversation and this inspiration and sharing how we can manifest. It's been beautiful, and I really appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate you as well. This has been a beautiful session.
Thank you for listening to the Connected Community Podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, please like, share, and subscribe. I can be found at www.nickyyoga.com, NICKYYYOGA.com. Until I see you again next week, I hope you have a beautiful day.